Hey guys, this is Jason, and I'm going to do another one of the intro to some kind of tool videos on Yeoman. I had a request in one of the comments on, I think it was Grunt for new developers that asked to do it specifically on Yeoman. And so I'm going to cover kind of what Yeoman is. I'm going to assume you know nothing, and kind of take it from there to give you some background on what that is and why you'd want to use it. So, if you're not familiar with Grunt, what Grunt is a task runner. And a little heads up for all the developers out there, Gulp, which works the same way as Grunt, is kind of new and up and coming. So definitely keep an eye out on that. However, Grunt works very similar to Gulp. So what I'm going to cover here will carry over to that. So basically, the idea is it's a workflow, but really what Yeoman is a Gruntfile generator, if you think of it like that. And so you have to be familiar with Grunt, and you can check out that video for kind of what Grunt is, but it's really just a way to automate some tasks. And you can really automate anything a computer can do, but it's used for concatenating files, minification, optimizing images, minifying HTML, compiling Sass or less, stylus, compass. And so it's kind of it's a build tool. It handles kind of when you're done coding, it'll handle kind of the live reload. So if you change your CSS, you'll instantly see the changes in the browser. So just kind of nice stuff like that. But what Yeoman is if you think of it as a grunt file generator. So instead of having to create your own grunt file with kind of your own workflow, this is just kind of one that will do it for you. And it's actually probably one of the best ways to go about actually creating a grunt file. And Yeoman's a little bit more than that, but if you think of it like that, it'll actually help you quite a bit. So what Yeoman, the command line tool is just a program on your computer. So it's just, Yo is the actual program name, just like if you typed CD for change directory or whatever. But if you do yo-v, you can see I've got Yeoman version 1.1. It's just a command line tool. And what you can do is Yeoman has a built-in generators, and you can find the generators online, and it'll kind of, they've got generators for everything. And again, these are basically pre-made grunt files for various kinds of workflows that people have created. So whether you're working in Angular or WordPress. And this just might change how, what Grunt actually does. So for example, instead of Grunt looking inside of an app folder for your CSS, it might look inside of your theme folder if you get the WordPress one. So it just kind of changes some defaults. But at the end of the day, it's just a way to kind of manage what your workflow is for when you're actually coding. So it just kind of goes on and on. But when you actually see these, for instance, I will take a look at the web app generator, which is probably one of the most common ones. So if you just Google web app, you can see here's the actual web app generator, and you can see that you do npm install, and then you're saying the -g flag is to install this particular one as a global tool. And then you can then type web app. So the Yeoman application or command line program will actually use the web app generator, which is installed in a particular directory from this. And then and that's how you do it. So what I'll do is I'm just going to create a folder somewhere. So I have alias QQ to my projects folder, and present working directory will show where that is. And I'll just kind of make a directory, and we'll just call it temp. And then I will cd into temp, so you can actually see what it is. If I open this, like so, you'll see that it's empty, as it should be. So then what I'll do is, because I've already installed this web app generator on the computer, I've already got that, but if I didn't, I would just run that command. And this is a node module. Node is just kind of an execution environment. and you're going to type Yo Web App. So if I just do Yo Web App, it'll go through and it'll actually create this grunt file. But it's going to ask you some questions to help kind of customize it. And so, again, it's really just a grunt file. But as if you've used Grunt before, you know that Grunt will use node modules. So this is basically asking you both what node modules you want to include as well, and or kind of what Bower packages. And Bower is a package manager that can help download libraries from the internet like jQuery or Modernizer. So in this case, it's asking me, do I want to use Bootstrap for Sass? And this is saying, you know, many of you are probably familiar with Twitter's Bootstrap, but this is asking, do you want to use the Sass version of Bootstrap? As you know, Bootstrap started with using less, and this will actually include all of the Sass source files for Bootstrap, in addition to simply, as opposed to just not including it, where you just use the minified CSS. And you can use the spacebar to toggle these on and off, and the up and down arrow to select one. And so I'll just go ahead and leave that on. Modernizer, you know, do you want to include that or not? And then you just press return. And it'll go through, and what it's going to do is download all the node modules and effectively create this grunt file. And you can see that if you look in the folder as it's kind of doing that, it's creating a bunch of stuff. And I'll kind of walk through this. And one of the big kind of hurdles for people using Yeoman is you know, every project has its own kind of structure. And this is what hung me up for quite a while with Yeoman is, you know, people are going, okay, I've got a, you know, a specific kind of framework I'm working in, whether it's Laravel or Zend, or, you know, you're using Ruby on Rails, or you're, you know, working inside of WordPress or kind of whatever. And so you get this, like, all this stuff, and you're like, okay, so how am I supposed to even use this effectively for my particular project? And the nice thing to know is that while there are generators for different kinds of projects like WordPress and etc., and you can definitely check those out, and those maybe adapt this structure. And some of them, the WordPress one, which I haven't looked in, might download WordPress and actually place it in here and give you that. But the really big thing you really need to know about is really just this grunt file. And in fact, you can take this grunt file and dump it into your to the repository root, the repo root of your project, and modify it to actually still use it. The rest of this stuff you don't actually have to use, but I'll kind of quickly skim over this. But the Bower, you know, in order to know what Bower is, if you come in here and I were to say like Bower search, and I were to type jQuery, it's going to pull up a ton of stuff, all kinds of Git repositories, basically. And what I could do is, if I type Bower install, and I type jQuery or any one of these blue things, what it's going to do is it's going to go out to that GitHub repository and actually clone the repo and expand the default branch and put it inside of wherever is specified in this file. And you can see it's directory app Bower components. So if I open up app Bower components, it's the entire project, just like you cloned it from Git, is all it does. And if you go ahead and actually append the -save flag to that, so if I did Bower install --save, then what it's going to do is it's going to write that file to your bower.json file. And if I open that up, you'll see here that it already kind of comes with Sass Bootstrap, Modernizer, and jQuery. And answering yes to those questions just appended these these lines of text to this file. And the reason that that's important is because usually you're going to have a ton of projects in here, lots and lots of stuff that you don't want necessarily to be part of your repository. What you do is you just send along or just track the bower.json file and git ignore this Bower components. In fact, they probably have already done that within this particular generator. So if you go to like git ignore, you'll see, yeah, right here. See how they untracked it. So that means that if you put this under version control with Git, that it wouldn't be included. And so when you send this over to another developer or whatever, what they would do is type, well, they first type npm install, and then they type Bower npm install to install the node modules, and then bower install to install those particular packages. And so what this is going to do when I type bower install is it's actually going to read bower.json and then resolve these projects, and these are registered within a particular like web service, the version or the commit. And you don't have to link it like this. You can link directly to a Git repository, even a zip file, or just some random file on the internet, and it would work too. But you can do bower install and actually read that file, go through and actually install any that are installed. And that just literally all it does is just downloads it to this folder. It doesn't do anything else. But bower RC just kind of configures that part of it. Editor config is just a standardized way of setting up IDE settings. We're going to ignore the Git stuff. I've got a separate video on Git that you can watch that's intro to that. So, you know, the web app is a HTML base, you know, stock template. So you end up with your index.html, single HTML file. Here's an images folder. Here's a scripts folder. Here's your Sass folder. There you go. And the Grunt can automatically create an optimized version of this folder for actual production use, which is kind of one of its cool benefits. But a lot of times you're not going to conform to this particular structure unless you're really creating a HTML website. But the reality is, what sites are really HTML these days, except for JavaScript single page applications, and in which case you're probably going to be using the Angular generator or Backbone or something like that. And so oftentimes you will use this if you're creating like a JavaScript based, you know, SPA style website. But for the most part, you know, if you've got a server-side environment or CMS that you're using, you know, you're not going to use the structure. But take a look at some of the other generators. Okay, so all that to say is the important part of this is this grunt file and what it does. And so I can come in here and I can just run grunt serve, and that'll kick things off, open a browser, and it'll actually open up that index.html page. And then as I make changes, either to the HTML or the CS or the Sass, you'll see the changes instantly reflected. And debugging and everything's all set, nice and clean, and it's just great. But I'm going to walk through the grunt file and show you kind of what it actually does. So, kind of stepping through this, and you can see that there's quite a bit in here. There's all kinds of stuff, and I'm going to go through each one, skipping over the parts that I don't use very often, because again, this is kind of an intro video. But the idea of Grunt is that you register tasks, and so you'll see throughout here, as I just kind of scroll down, you'll see things like watch, and if I scroll down, you'll see connect, and if I keep going, you'll see clean, and JSHint, and Mocha, and Compass, and Auto Prefixer, and Rev, and usemin prepare, and imagemin, and it just goes on and on. These are all tasks that are defined. And so what you see up here is this is basically saying load a single plugin, and its job is to load all other plugins. And so if you go, I really want to make sure to include the ability to process Sass files. Well, inside of package.json will be all of these modules that's being used. And so you can see that there'll be a grunt Sass in here somewhere. I don't know. Where is it? You know, prefix areas. Somewhere in here is Sass. I'm probably just missing it. So anyway, really? Let's see. Sass. It's Compass. There it is. Compass. That's why I was looking at it. So you can see the Grunt plugin for Compass right there with the version. And so on the command line, when I run npm install, it's actually going to go and inside of node modules put the Compass plugin, and then your grunt file runs this one plugin which loads all other plugins, so you don't have to manually include every plugin within this file just to be able to use it. It's kind of the same way as doing an include or require in some side of some other object-oriented languages. So that's all this does. This basically says bring in everything so that I can use it. And a lot of this is commented. So you see here, you know, time, how long it takes, you know, for a task to run. That's what this particular one does. And then it's got just, and this is just plain JavaScript, again, because this is Node, you know, it's just a JavaScript object. But it's got some configuration variables and stuff, but then it goes into the tasks. So you got a watch task and a connect. So I'll go through each one. But at the end of this, if you kind of scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see the way you run grunt task, by the way, is you just type grunt and then the name of the task. So grunt and then the task name, and that's how you run it. So you can type grunt serve, grunt server, grunt test, grunt build, and there's a default task too. So when you just run grunt, and then these are the individual tasks that get run whenever you type that particular word. Grunt serve is the most common one. So if we look up at that, you'll see that on the serve task we can pass in a property or an argument if we wanted to. But if you type grunt serve by itself, it's going to go through and it's going to do these particular tasks: clean server, concurrent, auto prefixer, connect, live reload, and watch. Now, I'm going to actually go through all of the tasks so you kind of know what each one does, but these are the ones that get run when you run grunt serve, which is primarily what you'll do. So like if I right now just typed grunt serve, and I've not done this yet, but we'll see what happens, it'll go through and it'll run all of those tasks. And you can see here that what it's reporting and kind of what it's doing, but it's basically going through all these tasks, which I'll go through in a second. So it's kind of going through these, and then it opens a browser, and you can see it opens, and we're looking at that index.html page right now. And I won't do it, but if I made any changes to that HTML page and hit save, this would instantly reload. So there you go. All right, so we can quit that, Control C, and I'll just kind of run through what these are. So these bring in all the plugins. That just is a plugin to help report time. And here's our config. All right, so here's the first task, watch. This task is responsible for monitoring changes on files. So you can see that you can run watch JavaScript, watch JS test, watch, etc., or you can just run watch and it'll apply to all these. But this is saying that when you run the watch task, and for JavaScript, or just watch, which applies to all of them, it will monitor these files, file or files, matching this particular pattern. This is just a variable saying yeoman.app, and that is a Yeoman variable that's actually specified, but you could just put in a relative path to something here. And it's going to the scripts, and this is regex for matching basically any JavaScript file. So this is saying whenever a JavaScript file changes that's named anything inside of scripts, then you're going to run whatever tasks are specified here, and whether you want to automatically fire off live reload, which will reload the web browser for you when that changes. And you just keep going. When the grunt file changes, you're not going to do anything. When you're watching the SAS files, either SCSS or SAS, go ahead and run compass server and then auto prefixer. So that's what watch does. Is it just monitors files for changes and then specifies what tasks to run when those files change. And the general rule of thumb is that you actually watch SAS files and then go ahead and compile the SAS, but also watch the resulting CSS file that gets generated and then run auto prefixer and then eventually live reload on top of that. And you can see kind of how that's configured, but I'm not going to go through the specific documentation of this because you can actually look up grunt watch and see the configuration and kind of see what this stuff does. But this is what this is doing, is it's watching certain file patterns and then firing off tasks when those things change. The connect server is what's responsible for enabling the live reload connection to the browser. It's a live reload connect server. Just think of it like you're used to connecting to a web server and seeing the output. Same kind of thing here, but there's a secondary connection that occurs to your browser. It's kind of like a data pipe, if you want to think of it that way. And it can communicate with the browser saying, hey, reload or do something else. And it actually doesn't even need to do a full page reload in some cases. But it's a separate server that is accessible whenever you use the plugin Live Reload, which is a Chrome extension. And you can start a live reload server and your browser can connect to it. And it's what allows for when you make changes to see the browser update in real time. So that's what the Connect server is. And then it's got different options for, you know, distribution for like production versus just development. Clean. Clean just means delete. So this is saying delete this folder. There you go. That's what the clean task does. It just means clean a directory, delete the contents of a directory. JS task will actually run JS against files, JavaScript files, and report any errors that you see. Mocha testing framework. There you go. You can run tests. There's your compass, which will compile your SAS, and you can see your options and stuff there. And again, you are supposed to tweak these settings if they don't work for you, and so tweak them so that they work based on your particular project. Auto prefixer will go through and actually take something like oh, I don't know, border radius or whatever needs to be prefixed, vendor prefixes specifically. So you can inside your SAS or just your CSS, you can just write the unprefixed versions and know that this will automatically go through and compare what's compatible against caniuse.com and automatically prefix things that need to be prefixed based on the last 1, 2, 3 versions of browsers. So you just write the unprefixed ones, and this will go through and append what it needs to make that work. Bower install task. This automatically inject Bower components in. Oh, that's convenient. I actually don't use this, but that's what it does. And so you can, instead of saying Bower install and then the name of it and just having it download, you can actually use the grunt task Bower install, which will additionally automatically pop the reference to the downloaded file directly in your HTML. Nice little convenience. You can see this renames files for browser caching purposes. This will actually go through and search against your HTML. So if you actually look at your HTML that's in here, you're going to see these flags like build CSS, in Bower, in build, you're going to see these comments basically, like right here. And that is for actually the Yeoman process, but some of these tasks will actually go through your source code, look for specific styled comments, and then do things based on what it finds inside of there. So what this is basically going to do is append a query string, like a question mark, and then you'll see some options after that for cache busting purposes. And so when you reference a file with like a question mark and then some data after it to the browser, that appears as a completely different file, and so it won't use the cache version. And this will actually work against all references, even inside of styles. And so if you're using background images, links to basically any kind of file, it'll go through and actually append a timestamp variable to those references, so that you can know that when you push this up, you won't have to tell clients, go empty your cache so you can see the changes. It'll just it kind of removes that need. So the Yeoman process is actually pretty cool. That's actually what goes through and reads those Yeoman blocks to take care of concatenating and minifying everything into a single file. So in your, because the idea is that you need these separate file references inside of your HTML. See how these are all separate script tags? Because as you're coding and making JavaScript files, you need to be able to debug and see that code unminified in its original source location so you can work. But when you actually want to deploy this by using grunt build, you're going to want to compress all of your JavaScript into a single file, and that's what the Yeoman takes care of. Image min runs usually like JPEG Tran or Optiping or something like that against your images, and so what it's going to do is it's going to grab all of your images and it's going to effectively replace them with inside of the distribution folder only. At least that's how this is configured, but you can specify it. So it'll take your images, it'll actually strip out the metadata. So if you use the Save for Web dialog box inside of Photoshop or something like that, you will actually get probably about a 30 to 40% file size reduction if you run it through something like this tool, and you won't lose any quality. It doesn't affect compression. It strips metadata within inside of the file to get that kind of out. So meaning reduce the file size. So that's always a good thing to do. And then there's a SVG min, stuff for SVGs, HTML mins, HTML, blah, blah, blah. Copy does just what it says. It copies one set of directory contents to another. Modernizer. So this is useful if you're doing a lot of unit tests, but you can generate a custom modernizer build that only includes the references to the tests that you have in your app, as it says in the comments. Concurrent allows you to run grunt tasks concurrently. By default, tasks are done synchronously, so it's one after the other. But concurrent lets you actually fire them off at the same time. And then here's the actual grunt task names that you'll actually call from the command line. So you have serve, which just runs, starts up, cleans the temp folder, runs the server, starts the server, which does a bunch of other stuff. You can see that when server is run, which is right here, it runs compass and then copies the styles. So you kind of trace kind of what goes on. Auto prefixer will take care of, well, we already talked about that. Live reload, and then it starts watching, monitoring for file changes. And then you've got the server, which is deprecated, test for unit tests, build, which actually runs through all of this stuff to create a nice, clean, optimized version. And so if I actually ran that, which is pretty cool to see, but if I do grunt build, watch, it'll run through all of those tasks and create a dist distribution directory at the repo root here. And you can see it right here as it's kind of building. But this is a really, really optimized version of the app. So if I open up the HTML, even the HTML itself is minified. And you can see the effect that this build process has had, that even the styles, look at this. See how it's been, there's that timestamp that I talked about, the cache busting for the CSS file. You can see that all CSS now is in this one file, no matter how many SAS files you had. You can see that the JavaScript now is one script file right there. And inside of the CSS and JavaScript will be correct references too. And so it all just works. But that's like an optimized version of your app is this one right here. So how you do this within a server-side framework is kind of specific, but that's what the build task does, is it runs all of those there. And then your default task, which is what you get when you just run grunt itself, which also does that same thing, except it also runs your unit test. And that's the end of the grunt file. And Yeoman is mostly this grunt file. So you can see that, okay, it's, you know, if you look at it, you got an HTML file, an empty directory, empty images folder, empty scripts folder, a favicon, and that's it. You know, the node modules are what the grunt file uses. Bower is just your packages that you're referencing in your index. So Yeoman is this workflow, this grunt workflow is what Yeoman is. And I hope that kind of distills some of the kind of what it is, because a lot of people look at this and they're like, okay, it's a scaffolding tool, it's got grunt and yo and bower, and how does all that work together? And it's really just this grunt file. And so if you had like some sort of custom kind of project, you could go into this grunt file, and you would want to take the package.json as well, but take these files and dump them into your repo root and change these settings. Actually, like wipe out that variable and do something like that, you know, and point it to your scripts folder. That's kind of what you want to do, is tweak this so that it works for your particular project, or find a generator that automatically works for that particular kind of project, which is really all that is. It's just someone who's gone through and tweaked these to work with that particular kind of structure. But the most common ones are kind of working with WordPress, Angular. If you're doing just a web app that's not really Angular, but you're kind of going to roll your own, you know, JavaScript kind of site with an API that's backed, you might use the web app generator. But there you go. And remember too that at the time of this recording, Gulp is very much, and Yeoman has a Gulp equivalent too. So, and you want to watch Gulp because Gulp is showing to be kind of a an up-and-coming kind of replacement to Grunt. The difference being, the real big difference is the fact that if you look at Grunt, how it actually will create files, and then then you'll run another task. So like this will do something, but the output of one task is not automatically sent to the input of another task via memory. It actually creates files on disk, and then the next task goes and gets those files off of disk. Whereas Gulp takes the output of one task and just pipes it through via memory, just like Unix pipes with the greater than symbol, to the next task, so it runs faster. And it also means that there's less configuration. So if you look at the Yeoman Gulp project, and you actually took a look at, let's say, app, and you took a look at templates and looked at the Gulp file, it'll look very, very similar. So you can see here's the same thing. We're requiring the plugins. Here's the styles, but you can see if you look at the syntax, it's just less and it's cleaner. And that's the whole grunt file right there, or Gulp file, I'm sorry. So there's not a whole lot to it. But it does a lot of the same stuff, and you can see exactly kind of how it's worked. But instead of grunt, you'd be typing Gulp, and you know, it works along the same lines. But keep an eye on Gulp. It will likely replace Grunt in the coming years. And there you go. So you're gonna need to use all this stuff and start getting in on the advanced tooling with the way web development is going. And so anyway, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I usually send out like helpful development tips at jchaney01 on Twitter. Or you can check me out at jasonchaney.com. Talk to me about your projects. Just say hi, whatever. So anyway, that's Grunt. You should definitely adopt some kind of build tool into your workflow. And I will see you out there in the on the interwebs.